ostensibly in our name. Since that time, Kehilla has grown enormously and has become one of the most progressive synagogues in the country. We are truly a Jews and justice synagogue. The Economic Justice Committee, of which I am a part, and several other people are a part on this, was formed in the early 2000s to put into action some of the progressive values of Kehilla. In addition to working to pass Prop 15, we are now working actively on criminal justice reform at Santa Rita Jail. And we have a new subcommittee called Homeless Action. We're working to ameliorate some of the awful conditions affecting unhoused people here in Oakland and in Alameda County. Tonight's webinar was planned by Sam Davis, Sue Goldberg, Laura Finkler, and myself. So I'm happy to introduce Rabbi David Cooper. Rabbi David is one of the original members and co-founders of Kehilla and was its congregation rabbi from 1999 to 2017. He is now currently has the well-earned title of Rabbi Emeritus. He's a lifelong activist whose passion for social justice has been a driving force within Kehilla, but also a strong influence in larger faith-based efforts for social, economic, and racial justice in the Bay Area. Thank you, David, and welcome.
Thank you. I want to thank Kehilla's Economic Justice Committee and Faith in Action East Bay for the efforts that you're taking to pass Prop 15. I'm especially proud of Kehilla at this time and of our activists who during this time of COVID have not diminished their efforts for peace and justice on so many fronts and on so many issues. It makes me proud to be part of this community, and I'm proud of Kehilla's long membership in OCO, now Faith in Action. And during the short time I'm going to be with you this evening, I've been asked to open this evening's organizing with a few words of spirit and Jewish teaching. And there's a piece of Talmud that bears on this evening's focus. I'm going to be putting it in the chat box, both in Aramaic and in English. There it is. Now, so what does the Talmud teach us about Proposition 15? In a section called Bava Batra, a discussion pops up about the responsibilities of city dwellers. One rabbi claimed that a person did not have any responsibilities for their city until they lived in it for at least 12 months. The other rabbis disagreed, and the discussion continued as follows. But isn't it taught in a separate teaching that if one lives in a city for 30 days, that they must contribute to the charity platter from which food is distributed to the poor? If one lives there for 3 months, they must contribute to the charity box. If one lives there for 6 months, they must contribute to the clothing fund. If one lives there for 9 months, they must contribute to the burial fund. If one lives there for 12 months, they must contribute to the columns of the city, that is, the construction of a security fence. The Torah gives general guidelines that we should live in communities that are places of justice and peace, and it is our responsibility to make it so. The rabbis are acting as legislators in this segment of the Talmud, and they're applying this general mandate to the specific kind of towns they lived in Babylonia in the 3rd and 4th centuries. Their frame for these rules is simply that if you are a resident of a city, and if you thereby benefit from what the city provides to you, then you must meet your responsibility to pay for your share of the needs of the people of that city. They were laying down a rule for their Jewish villages. That was their responsibility as legislators for their townships. In California, the proposition system here makes us voter legislators. Prop 15, as will be discussed this evening, lays down a legal responsibility for large corporations to pay their fair share of commercial property taxes to support our schools in particular, and the other needs of California communities. If these corporations will benefit from our community, they must help support it. That's what this is about. So I'm not going to end with a prayer, but rather with a blessing to recognize that what we do here is holy work and that we are commanded to do our part to make our communities places of justice and abundance for all. So this is a Kehilla bracha. I'm going to do it in English and then I'll teach you how to end it. It goes, blessed is the sovereign of justice and peace, sanctifying us with holy instruction and summoning us to engage with the needs of the community. So the last was 3 words of the bracha. If you know the opening, you don't need a reminder, but it ends with la'asok b'tzorchei tzibor, la'asok b'tzorchei tzibor. And so it starts, many of you know how it begins, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'tzorchei tzibor. So let us go on and say Amen, and go on to do what we need to do to make this community the place it needs to be, and the state a place that distributes its resources in a way that is fair and follows the needs of justice and peace. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi David, for that. That was wonderful and inspiring us to keep doing the work we need to keep doing in this really difficult period of time for our country, but maybe also hopeful, possibly, time of our country. I want to give you a sense of what the evening's going to look like, so people know. We will start with a presentation by Ben Grieff from Evolve. He's going to give us a PowerPoint presentation and then answer questions. And then we're going to outline action, things you can get involved with. And we'll be asking you to put your name, your email address, your name, and what you're interested in doing in the chat box. Following that, we're going to have someone, I'm not sure if it's Barbara or BK at this point. Do you know Sam from Faith in Action East Bay, who will be also talking about some of the work they are doing. And then following that, we're doing a very important tie-in to Proposition 20. It's not the focus of tonight's event, but it's a very important tie-in because it might diminish the resources, the financial resources that we get if Proposition 15 passes. So we really don't want Proposition 20 pass, and we will talk about it later, but it would result in reversal of some of the gains, decarceration, decreasing jail numbers that from Proposition 4757. So we will begin tonight, and we will unmute Ben. And I would like to introduce Ben. Thank you so much for coming tonight, Ben, and for all the fabulous work you've been doing. You've been doing this work on this initiative for since 2011, 7 years. But you founded Evolve in a nonprofit organization in San Francisco in 2011. Then you started 7 years ago to lead. What's that, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yes, good. And to lead Evolve California's campaign to restore funding for California's public schools. And this is to reform Proposition 13 that we know happened many, many years ago and ended up devastating the funds that were going into the public schools and took us from a very high proportion per child financial amount to a very low, I think like 48th or 49th in the country. And you can speak to that, Ben. So Ben has written, our work has helped change around a once untouchable issue that is the root cause for California's public education system being drastically underfunded. We have the opportunity now to start to reverse that. Ben also sits on the executive committee of the historic Schools and Communities First initiative, and that's Proposition 15 that we're meeting tonight to discuss. So welcome, Ben. Thank you very much again for coming.
Thank you very much, Karen, for having me. Also, thank you very much to Sam for helping to organize this. And you've been a big supporter of this initiative for as long as I can remember. Thank you very much to Sue for this, and for other members, like I see Debbie and Julie from East Bay Citizens for Action that have been, big supporters of this as well. This is an exciting time for us and all of us who've been working on this for so many years, and are very excited about this. I also thank you very much, Rabbi, for your introduction. I almost feel like I don't have to say anything after that. This certainly is a moral imperative. I'm someone who grew up in a progressive synagogue in Seattle, and it's rooted me in this work, because I was fortunate enough to have a quality education that was well funded, and I know so many other folks out there, especially in California right now, do not have that privilege. My mom was a special ed teacher for about 35 years, and I know especially for teachers like her, they're often the first ones to be cut when we have financial downturns like this, and it should really be the opposite. And that's really what this initiative is all about, raising revenue in a fair, sustainable way to fund the things that we all, need and deserve. So I want to real quick here, try to share my screen. Hopefully you all can see this. Are folks seeing my screen now? The thumbs up is helpful. Yes. Excellent. Yeah. Great. Excellent. Perfect. So again, I'm going to be talking about the Schools and Communities First initiative this evening, now known as Proposition 15. It will be the second proposition on your statewide ballot when you get your ballots in the mail at the beginning of October. I really want to emphasize, and if you remember anything tonight in about the 15 minutes I'm going to have to go over this, it's really the most important point is this. This initiative, Schools and Communities First, Prop 15, maintains all protections for all residential property. This is really the only thing you need to know about this, because this is the thing that the opposition will be spending much of their time trying to confuse voters and trick them into thinking that somehow this initiative is going to take away their Prop 13 protections. That is not the case. Any type of residential property, as you can see, all the different ones I've listed and any others that you can think of, as long as someone is living in that property, nothing will change for your property taxes. Really the most important point to remember. Even if you have a business that you run out of your home, your property taxes won't change. So if you remember one thing tonight, and if you can tell your friends and family and others about this initiative over the next few months, and you tell them one thing, please do tell them this. What we are talking about, though, is changing the property tax system we have for large commercial property owners, and Disneyland is the perfect example, right? Disneyland is still paying property taxes based on 1970s assessments of their theme park. Meanwhile, all of us are paying much more in property taxes every year, because in California, or really everywhere, there's a regular reassessment mechanism for residential property that does not exist for commercial property. Disneyland is going to be remaining in Anaheim for the foreseeable future. And as long as that happens, they're going to be paying property taxes at 1970s levels for the foreseeable future. And that's what we need to work to change. And that's what this initiative is really all about. But it's not just Disneyland. It's also large companies like Chevron. Chevron alone is undertaxed by at least $100 million every year because of this corporate loophole that Prop 15 is working to close. Chevron owns their own gas stations, all across the state. They have 2 oil refineries, they have office property, and they have oil fields that they all had prior to 1978 when Prop 13 passed. And so as long as this corporate loophole remains, they're still going to be paying property taxes from 4 decades ago. And that's why this is such a common sense initiative. That's all we're working to do, is to close this giant corporate loophole that has honestly cost our schools and communities $150 billion over the last 40 years. But you might be wondering, how is this possible? Well, under Prop 13, for those of you who might not be familiar, properties are only reassessed when they change hands. So this means some commercial properties, like the aforementioned Disneys and the Chevrons of the world, or say the Transamerica Pyramid, rarely, if ever, change hands. And so they are able to avoid paying their fair share of property taxes. And that's what we want to change. But it's not just large commercial property, corporations, excuse me. It's also some of the wealthiest people in the world. Some folks might be familiar with this gentleman, Michael Dell. He founded Dell Computers. And when he bought the Fairmont Miramar Hotel in Santa Monica for $200 million, instead of buying the hotel outright, what he did was split up the purchase among his wife and a business partner. So you can see here, nobody owns more than 50% of the property. And by doing that, he was able to avoid reassessment. And that's because under current property tax law here in California, if no one person or entity purchases more than 50% of the property, when it changes hands, it doesn't technically change hands. So this is a great example, because at the time of this purchase, he was the 18th richest person in the world. This is a great example because this is something that is only made possible if you're talking about commercial property. This is not something that, Sam, Sue, and myself could split up the purchase of a house and somehow avoid reassessment. This is really something that's only open to the corporations and some of the wealthiest investors in the world. And it's robbing our schools and communities of $2 million every single year. And that's the type of loophole that we need to close, because it's not just Michael Dell and this hotel in Santa Monica. The Twitter building in San Francisco was recently purchased for almost $1 billion. And they also avoided reassessment by splitting up the ownership. So instead of paying taxes on the $900 million purchase, they are only paying taxes on $400 million when the property was previously purchased. So this is the type of thing that is contributing to the fact that our schools and public services are woefully underfunded. I appear, I apologize, to be, here we go. So this, a little closer to home, this example is Oakland. What you can see here is a skyline. You can see all these different buildings. And you can see 1330 Broadway is paying $472 dollars per square foot, whereas the Bank of America building is paying $71 a square foot in property taxes. So obviously this makes no sense, right? There's no reason that all of these properties that are within a 2-block radius of each other in downtown Oakland should be paying vastly different amounts of property taxes. But they're paying these different amounts simply based on when their properties were purchased. And no difference. This doesn't have anything to do with how big the buildings are. This is only on the land value. And so you can see this is a big problem. Not only are we losing money, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later on, but it's also sort of makes no sense to the folks that are trying to purchase property now versus the folks that had the Bank of America building decades ago. So this is the type of situation that really makes no sense. You couldn't find this situation anywhere else in the country. And this is why we need to really pass Prop 15. But the other thing that often isn't talked about enough, I feel like, with this is the fact that Prop 13 was passed to keep our property taxes down, right? It was supposed to be for people. But when big corporations also get that same protection, we all have to pay more. Right? Since Prop 13 passed, we now have the highest income and sales tax in the country. We have the second highest gas tax in the country. And as we all know, especially here in the Bay Area, our cities, our counties, our school districts, our other special districts are always asking us to pass local revenue measures, local sales tax increases, local parcel taxes, local bond measures, year after year. And so this initiative that was supposed to keep all of our taxes down has actually just shifted the tax burden onto other forms of taxation. And that's really what we're also working to change, is this is very unsustainable. So specifically, what this measure will do is reclaim up to $12 billion annually for our schools and communities, right? This is, again, protecting all residential property. And it just simply closes commercial industrial property tax loopholes, but also provides an incentive for small business owners. Right now, we have a tax on personal business equipment. So, for example, if you're a restaurant owner, you have to count up all your plates and your knives and your tables and chairs and your ovens and your refrigerators and your pots and pans and everything. Every year, you have to count that up, figure out how much it's worth, and then pay tax on that. That tax over the years brings in about $1 billion to California. But it's also a perfect example of how our state has been forced to nickel and dime individuals and small business owners to, again, make up for the fact that we've lost $150 billion from corporations and other large commercial property owners not paying their fair share of property taxes over the last 40 years. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to practically eliminate this tax for all businesses in California, but mostly for all small businesses. We're going to exempt the first $500,000 of personal business equipment from being taxed. So this is something, again, that's a very important part of the initiative for folks to know about and understand. Because the other side will also tell you, as I'll sort of talk later, that this is somehow going to be bad for businesses. Finally, this ensures strict accountability and transparency. So we know specifically how much money is going to come to each area in California. We know specifically how much money is going to be coming to different cities and counties and school districts. We're still working on finalizing all of these numbers, but we will know exactly how much. And then every year, we will be able to actually see, okay, what did my school district, what did my city spend this additional revenue on? Another thing to note here is that this does not affect all commercial property. This is something that will only establish reassessment at fair market value for properties over $3 million. So if you are a commercial property owner and you own property that's valued under $3 million, this will not change anything about your property taxes. You will be completely treated like a residential property, and all of your protections will remain in place. So this is a breakdown of where we're going to see the money flow here in the Bay Area. We're talking about $4.6 billion annually. So that's quite a large sum of money. And it's not just one-time money, this is every year. And also this is stable, reliable money. This is not money that is coming from the income tax or capital gains that are very volatile because they are often connected to the stock market. This is money that's coming from the stable, reliable property tax. So it's quite a bit of money for us here in the Bay Area and really for the rest of California as well. So you've heard my propaganda, right? You've heard from sort of the pro side. I do want to give fair time to our opponents here, and I want to mention a few of their arguments and sort of why their arguments are just fallacious. The first thing our opponents are going to say, and there's very little we can do about this, other than to repeat it over and over again, which is why I keep coming back to it, is that this is somehow going to affect residential properties. We know that's not true. They're going to say this is a slippery slope. You know, first they come for the large commercial properties, then they come for our homes. Totally untrue. As Karen mentioned, I have been doing this work for the last 7 years all across the state. I have not come across one organization who has been talking about touching the residential side of Prop 13. In fact, when Prop 13 passed in 1978, it passed with 64% of the vote. Today, according to polls, it's even more popular than it was when it passed. But what's not popular is the fact that Chevron and Disney and other large commercial property owners are also getting those same benefits. So we're only going to be focused on that, not on residential property at all. The other thing our opponents will say is that this is going to cause businesses to leave California. Totally untrue. I generally do these in person, but I always ask, like, who here actually thinks Disneyland is going to move to Arizona or Nevada, right? No, right? Who thinks Chevron is just going to stop selling gas in California? Absolutely not. Who thinks the Transamerica Pyramid or the Bank of America building is just going to up and move somewhere else? Obviously that's not going to happen. Neither are Tahoe ski mountains going to move, right? Neither are all of the wine production facilities in Napa and Sonoma. It's like, we're talking about land, right? You can't move the land, right? Safeway and Whole Foods and IKEA are not going to say, we no longer want to have stores here and make money here. We're the 5th largest economy in the world. They're always going to want to be here. But even if they did want to go, what they would find is that every other place in the country has regular reassessment of commercial property. So they would have to pay their fair share of property taxes. In fact, Schools and Communities First and Prop 15 does not change the tax rate at all. We would still have a 1% tax rate, but we would just be asking commercial property owners to pay fair market value on that 1% rate, which is one of the lowest rates in the country. So right now, not only are they not paying fair market value, they're not paying fair market value at a 1% rate. And compare that to other places in the country, Houston, Detroit, New York, all 3 different places in different geographic regions and doing different economically. They have about a 4% tax rate on their commercial properties. So what we're talking about is very, very minimal for them. But they're also going to say this is going to somehow increase the price of goods and services on us. You'll be hearing a lot about that from the opposition, unfortunately. And what we say to that is that's totally false and untrue, because the property tax has absolutely no bearing on the cost of goods and services. What we have seen is gas stations side by side at the same intersection. One is a Chevron station paying 10 times less than their competitor across the street, but we don't see Chevron charging 10 times less for gas. Oftentimes, their competitor across the street that is paying fair market value in property taxes is actually charging less for their gas. We see Trader Joe's all across the Bay Area charging the same price for milk, no matter if it's a new Trader Joe's or if it's a Trader Joe's that's been there for 20 years, whether it's a Trader Joe's that's leasing its property or a Trader Joe's that actually owns the building. Example after example, we have found of property taxes having no bearing at all on the cost of goods and services. I often tell people, if Disneyland was still charging 1978 prices to get into the theme park, maybe we would reconsider doing this. But the truth is, they're not. Prices at Disneyland have gone up over 1,000% since 1978, and they know exactly how much to charge to get as many people into their theme park as possible without charging too much that people actually won't want to come, right? Prices of goods and services are based on the market and what that will bear, not based on the property taxes being paid by commercial properties. One thing I did mention earlier, and I want to touch on it now here again, is how anti-competitive this actually is, right? If you are this parking lot owner here on the right that is paying $11.44 per square foot for your property, which is across the street from the Staples Center where the Lakers play down in LA, you're at a huge competitive advantage over the other parking lot owner who is paying almost 20 times more a year in property taxes, right? That makes no sense, right? This is not doing anything to foster new business, to foster entrepreneurship at all. And so this is the type of thing that we will eliminate, right? We will make every commercial property owner have a level playing field. So just because you were fortunate enough to start your business decades ago and pay a certain amount of property taxes then, doesn't mean you'll have a competitive advantage over a new business. we talk about schools a lot. That's where I come from in this. 40% of the revenue will go to public schools, but the other 60% of the revenue will be distributed throughout other community services, for our parks, for our libraries, for our first responders and emergency services, for affordable housing, for public transportation, for AC Transit and for BART, and for filling our potholes, but also really for our fire districts. Right now in California, that's a huge concern. We have other concerns now, but for the last several years, that has been a huge concern. And we have systematically defunded our fire districts over the last 40 years, which makes us all less safe. And some of this money will go directly to fire districts as well. So this is really something that benefits the whole community. I want to make clear for folks, so you can tell other people, because some people are not as familiar with this, that this is a unique system in California. When Prop 13 passed in 1978, over the next 4 years, there were 43 copycat pieces of legislation that passed all across the country, right? We started an anti-tax revolt, right? Reagan wrote in his autobiography, this started a prairie fire across the country. But not one of those other areas included commercial property in their property tax protections. That is just us, right? That is California exceptionalism at its worst, right? And that's what we want to change. All this initiative is calling for is to put our state on par with how North Dakota and Oklahoma and Mississippi and any other place in the country taxes their commercial property. Here's some of our supporters. You can see we have a big list of supporters, statewide organizations, the League of Women Voters, the Democratic Party, ACLU. And then you can see on the right column here, we have a lot of support from elected officials, right? There might be differences between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, but they agree on this, right? This is something where it's just a common sense. If you're a Democrat, you're just like, well, yeah, this makes sense. Corporations should pay their fair share. This does make sense. Let's do what they do everywhere else in the country. So remember, vote yes on 15. It maintains protections for all residential property, right? No matter what you hear, tell your friends, tell your neighbors. That's really critical to know. Doesn't change anything for any residential property. And I will pause there. And I certainly would be interested in taking any questions that people have. And again, thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions from folks.
Thank you so much, Ben. That's a terrific PowerPoint and very informative and very clear. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to open the floor for questions. How we'll do this is, if you go onto the participants icon down at the bottom of your screen and you click on that, and if you do want to ask a question, please click on the icon that says raise hand. And I see some questions are already coming up. So keep your hand raised. Okay, so Julie and Debbie, and we're going to go first with Julie. So let's see. I'm going to lower your hand. Nope. Oops, I didn't get it right. Lower hand. Okay, we'll go with Julie Dickey, and you are now unmuted.
Okay. So, yes, it takes the competition out of the commercial market. Right now, it's anti-competitive.
That's right.
So one thing I've heard, the same problem exists in the residential market. Somebody bought their house more recently than I bought mine 30 years ago. So what's the fix for that? Is that there's no fix in here for that, I'm assuming.
Yeah, no, our position on that is Prop 13 was meant to protect people, and it should remain in place to protect people, right? There's a lot of folks that are relying on that. But what nobody really even understood, and certainly not what 64% of the voters were voting for in 1978, was to extend those protections to large commercial properties. So that's really all that we're working to do, is close this loophole that unfortunately a majority of Californians don't even know exists. When people hear Prop 13, they think it's just for them, and they have no idea that it also applies to Chevron.
Mhm.
So thank you, Julie. We'll move next to Christina. And I will unmute you. Oops.
I
let's see.
unmuted me.
Great.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask one small question. This is a terrific effort and long overdue, and thank you very much. I look forward to talking to as many people as possible about it. But no piece of legislation is ever perfect, as nothing is. How did you pick the $3 million cap for the small businesses? Because I can imagine, having been part of a small business for 40 years, if you owned a building, you could be in an area that then becomes more valuable, and suddenly your building is worth more than $3 million. How did you pick that cap? I know it could be amended later, but how did you pick that?
Yeah, I think the other thing to clarify is that that amount will increase with inflation over time. So if you're in a $2.5 million building now, we will increase that cap. So you won't, if your value of the property goes up, it will go up with inflation. What we were working to do also with this is to make sure the whole state is able to get some more money. And the Bay Area has much higher prices than, say, the Central Valley. And so if we increase that too much, then unfortunately, too much of the money would be going only to the coastal areas and not really helping the communities in other areas. But yeah, so that's why we sort of came up to that compromise with $3 million.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Okay, now I'm going to call on Debbie. I'm going to lower your hand, and you are unmuted. Are you unmuted? Okay. Go ahead, Debbie.
Hello, Ben.
Hi, Debbie.
Two questions. Number one, can we get a hold of the PowerPoint somehow I invited another couple of groups to join us, and I'm sorry to see not the people I expected show up did not. But there are people out there that are interested. Together We Will people are interested. I think I'm sorry to see that the Unitarian Church that I invited, their social justice group, I was sort of hoping they would bond with Kehilla on this issue. That's one question. What was the other thing?
I'll just say yes to that. That's certainly something I can pass along.
Yeah, it would be nice to have the PowerPoint to share. And I can't remember the second question. If I think of it, I'll bring it up.
Okay. Thank you so much, Debbie. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, Debbie. Okay, now I'm going to call on Sam Frankel.
I unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for the years of work getting to us this place. My question, when I've talked to people, some older folks are skeptical and they say, but the state legislature is going to change it. And I know that the way the things are written, that can't happen, but can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I think that it kind of dovetails well with the idea that somehow people are feeling this might be a slippery slope till changing the residential property. And I think what people should be aware is that Prop 13 is in the Constitution. So to make a change to Prop 13, we have to amend the Constitution. And the only way to do that in California is by having the voters decide. So the legislature can't actually change anything here. They could certainly decide to change something, but they would have to put that before voters. So I would definitely let people know that any kind of change to Prop 13 that may or may not come in the future would have to go before voters. So that's a great question.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sam. So we have a few questions that came up in the chat. The first one is, how are you going to let people know how to vote?
So that's a great question. One of the things that we are working on now is setting up a handwritten letter campaign that we can send out to likely voters, and to make sure that they know that this is something that really kind of bullet points, $12 billion for schools and community services, not touching residential property, and not raising taxes on you, right? Those are sort of our three main bullet points, and we're going to be doing a handwritten letter campaign for that. And we're also doing a lot of phone banking, right? We're calling a lot of voters. Right now, we've started phone banking this month. We've had really good success because surprisingly, people are kind of sitting at home with not a lot to do. And so it's actually a good way to reach out to voters on this. We'll also be doing TV and radio and digital ads as we move forward towards the fall. Great question.
Okay, so we have two more questions we're going to field, and then we're going to have Ben do actually more discussion about the actions that you just raised. This question is from Allison. Does Chevron pay its fair share for their towers in Houston? Does anyone know that answer?
Yeah, definitely, because other commercial property owners in other states don't have a Prop 13 protection. So they're paying fair market value, but like I mentioned in Houston, they're paying close to 4% of fair market value, as opposed to what they're paying here. Even when we win Prop 15, they'll still be only paying 1%. So it's a good question.
Okay, and we have Subaru has a question, and then I saw Hannah just put her hand up. So we'll go to Hannah, and I think then we'll move on to the actions. Subaru's question is this the first time such an effort is being made in our state?
Yes, there has been talk about this for many years. There was actually in 1978 a measure very similar to this one that was on the ballot at the same time as Prop 13. It did not, unfortunately, win. And so this is the first time since then that there was going to be anything on the ballot that would remove commercial properties from Prop 13 protections.
Great. And our final question is from Hannah. I'm lowering your hand, Hannah.
Hi, thank you for lowering my hand. Thank you for this evening. I'm a longtime East Bay residential real estate agent. I have two questions. If you could walk through the process, if we are to prevail and Prop 15 passes, I think about how we also prevailed and voted to keep daylight saving time and do away with changing the clocks. And yet the legislature hasn't felt the need to make that so still yet. And you mentioning this as being a constitutional amendment, I'd like to understand more about the timeline and kind of a frank talk about the reality of this happening or not, and the wheels that must turn to do that. And then as a residential realtor, I wonder if you've reached out to what amounts to our union lobby for support for this proposition, because I certainly support it and have been long time hoping to see this, and think we could be useful disseminators of the truth of it not hurting residences, since that seems to be a prevailing concern in the opponent world.
Yeah, you touch on two great things, and I'm glad you touched on that. One thing that I will do is I will put my email in the chat here. So if you or anyone else has any other questions or is interested in getting involved in some way, like you are specifically as a realtor, please do feel free to reach out to me. We do definitely have individual real estate agent support, but unfortunately, the real estate industry as a whole is our number one opposition to this. They're the ones that are spearheading the no campaign and are putting together, what they say will be over $100 million to stop this. But I'm very interested to talk to individual realtors because I know not all realtors feel the same way, and hopefully to get you involved with that. The other question about this is actually interesting in this moment because this is money for our government. And so this is something that actually folks in the legislature really want to see passed because we are desperate for revenue now. I felt that this was important prior to COVID-19, and now it's more important than ever. And so that's why we see such support from our local elected officials, our mayors, the president of the state Senate is a big supporter, the speaker of the House, the Assembly is a big supporter as well. So we don't anticipate this is going to be something that they're going to try to stop, because they understand this is an unprecedented time in terms of needing money here in California.
So thank you, Hannah, for those questions. And I want to mention two logistical things. One is that you can, if you want to save the chat, which has all this information in it, you can go onto chat, and at the very bottom, there's a file. You can hit that and you can save the chat to go into your own storage someplace in your computer. And the second thing was, we are now going to ask Ben to delineate the specific actions that you all can join us in doing to get this proposition passed. Please use the chat to indicate your name, your email address, and what you're interested in doing, and we will follow up with you.
Great.
Okay, Ben, thank you.
So great. I'm going to put one thing in the chat here, and then I'm also going to return to sharing my screen. And I don't know if anyone noticed, there was someone that was noted out to support this. So really the easiest thing that you all can do tonight, right now, from the privacy of your own homes, is to click on our petition and ask him to support this initiative, right? He obviously has a lot on his mind right now, but he also has a lot of commercial property owners and corporations and campaign contributors telling him that he should not support this. So we don't have that same kind of money to throw around at him and that political power, but what we do have are actual individuals. So if you could please take a look at that petition link and go to it, sign the petition, that would be really fantastic. I'm attempting to scroll to my, here we are. So these are things that you can do. Check out our website. There's more information here. I was able to touch on a lot tonight, but there's certainly more detail. We have more detailed policy briefs, more specifics. You can actually read the text of the initiative on our website. So I encourage you to visit that to educate yourselves more. Like I mentioned, sign the petition to Governor Newsom, super important. On that petition, you will see there are different boxes that you can check of things that you're interested in doing, like joining our letter writing campaign, signing up to write letters to the editor. You are able to sign up for phone banks, all those things. So just check those boxes, and then one of our organizers will follow up. But also really, it's all about spreading the word of mouth, right? We know we get a lot of phone calls, we get a lot of ads, a lot of mail. The most important thing that we can do is to talk to our friends and family and neighbors about this. They want to hear from a trusted source. And they need to hear at least 3 times from a trusted source that this will not change anything for residential property. Like you don't even know how hard you are going to be hit over the head with that campaign messaging from the opposition. It's going to be ridiculous. And so they need to hear from us that actually all those mailers you see, don't believe the lies, focus on what I'm telling you. I've read the initiative. I know what it's about. This is for our schools and communities without changing your taxes. And then, finally, our organization has been able to sustain itself over the years through contributions from individuals. We're 100% grassroots funded. We have not received, funding, obviously, from corporations or any other, large benefactors. It's all been through grassroots, old-fashioned knocking on doors, talking to people on the street. Some of you might have seen some folks with a T-shirt like this around town. And we are unfortunately unable to do those activities right now. And we don't know the next time we will resume those activities. So if you are supportive of this initiative, if you do support local grassroots organizations, please do consider making a contribution to our campaign. We have 13,000 members who are able to sustain us with contributions, both ongoing and one-time contributions. If you're able to, I do encourage you to do that as well. But there are other ways to get involved and help the campaign as we move forward. The first thing is signing the petition and then checking those different boxes of ways that you would be able to help out over the next few months. On Sunday, we will have 100 days till the election, which really means we have about 70 days until ballots drop. So it's a little over 2 months till people start getting their ballots in the mail, because everyone is getting a mail-in ballot this year. So very, very important that we start talking to voters in August and September, because this is especially a time we can't really wait till the middle of October to start having conversations with people. So if you want to help out writing letters to the editor, if you want to help out writing letters to voters, if you want to help out phone banking, if you want to also share your story, we are really looking for people who are homeowners who might remember Prop 13 and were around in 1978, and saying why they as homeowners support this initiative, right? So there are lots of ways to get involved. Please do sign the petition and check those boxes, and hopefully you can make a contribution to support our work as well. But thank you very much all for your time again. Thank you, Sue and Karen and Sam and Rabbi for that nice introduction again. I really appreciate all of you listening tonight, and hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Okay, thank you again, Sam. Now, I just want to clarify, you're saying if people went on right now
Yes.
and they hit the link that you put in about the petition, they will be able to sign the petition and also check all the other things they can do.
That's correct.
Okay.
Not nice and easy for people to do right in one space.
Okay, that's terrific. Okay, hope people do that. Another logistical thing is that if people want to indicate approval for something, you can put thumbs up, you can wiggle your hands, or you can go to reactions at the right bottom of your screen, and it allows you to clap or do a thumbs up, just to let you know. Okay, so I think, Debbie, you had a question I saw. Is that correct? Do you still have a question, Debbie? Okay, go ahead.
Not a question, comment. Okay. Some of us have been paying $39. It's either quarterly or 3 times a year. You hardly notice it. It works out really well. I really highly recommend joining Evolve and putting out your $39 3 times a year.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate that.
That's great.
Okay, question. Are there going to be any posters, or if there is not money for posters, is there a way we can get images so some of us who might be able to print stuff out ourselves, can we get something to, because
Yeah.
I think it's time to start putting things on our windows, our front door, in our car windows, on the back of our car.
That's an excellent question, Debbie. I'm glad you brought that up. We will be having window signs in August.
Okay.
We got our number, we've designed the logo. Now it's all about getting them printed. And then if folks are interested in that, please do reach out as well. We're trying to figure out, because we're not going to have sort of that physical campaign space that we would have in normal times, but we are going to figure out how we can distribute those to folks. So thank you for asking.
And in addition, some of us will be doing some postcards to voters as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your support. I appreciate it. And again, thank you all. I hope you have a great evening.
Thank
you,
you.
Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Take care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
so we're going to move on to the
I
next.
have one more question,
I'm sorry, who is that?
Helen Smiler.
Okay, Helen.
Question for Ben. I just got some stuff today that I didn't look at very carefully from the League of Women Voters, which is also supporting this and, training people as speakers and various kinds of things. I'm just curious as to what kind of sort of coordination and collaboration you're doing with organizations like that.
Oh yeah, it's a great question. And the League has been part of this coalition for a long time, as has other groups like Faith in Action, East Bay, and so many others. And we're all working in the same coordinated way and the same messaging and sort of have the same signs to give out and everything like that. So yes, great question as well.
Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for mentioning Faith in Action East Bay. Ben, it's a good segue. We're now going to move to welcome Barbara Lafitte-Oluwole, who is the Program and Operations Manager of Faith in Action East Bay. Let me just mention a few things about Faith in Action East Bay. It's formerly called OCO, Oakland Community Organizations. It's now changed its name. And it's a federation of dozens of congregations and schools across Alameda and Contra Costa County, including Kehilla, we're a member. And it organizes for social change in the areas of education, immigration, and criminal justice reform for over 40 years. We want to welcome Barbara. She's a program and operations manager, and she's also a long-term leader in Faith in Action East Bay, working for violence prevention and ending mass incarceration. Welcome, Barbara. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Karen. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Haven't seen you guys in a while. Good to see your faces.
Hi, Barbara.
So, as you know, most of you should know by now that on Saturday, Faith in Action East Bay is going to have our regional leadership retreat. And actually the civic engagement work that we're about to start is basically most of the agenda for the day. And where I haven't been the one trained on this, everyone was in meetings this evening, so I got chosen to at least share a PowerPoint with you on the what we're going to be doing, especially the we're going to be doing the what do you call it, cards, the pledge cards, digital pledge cards, and outvote. So pledge cards we're going to be doing online and on your from your cell phones to your contacts, and the same happens with outvote. It's a text that you can send to members of your family, your friends, your congregation, your community members. So this is Pico, California's PowerPoint presentation.
Barbara, is there any way you can make it bigger?
I think, Sam, if you
Be on the left side, top left, those buttons.
in here, Sam, you should be able to increase the size right here. Can you see where? No, you can't see what I'm doing. Right next to the printer, there's a, on the other side, all the way over. Yeah, right up there. Not that far up. Come down. See, right, no, there's a little print thing right there. If you want to make me a co-host, and I could share my screen and I could see it.
You're a co-host, Barbara.
I'm
So go
sorry.
ahead. Yeah, share your screen
See
because
it, but I couldn't tell you where it was.
I'm not as good at this stuff.
Okay, well, I hope I am as good. Let me try to share my screen and see it. See right quick if I can do that. Okay.
Good, better. Thank you.
Is it making it bigger? Let's see.
I think click on present.
Okay, I think 200% is too much.
It's 100% is probably fine.
It was 100. I thought it was 100%. Anyway, let me go.
Just click on the present button in the top right. It'll make it all big and.
Hey. Okay.
Thanks, Sandy.
That's the full screen. So we have been asked, and we are asking leaders to prepare lists so that you can make sure you have a list of people that you can reach out to. So, you know, think about who you want to reach out to for to make sure that they are registered to vote and they're getting out to vote. And and then, of course, if you want to make your congregation 100% voting congregation, you can also include your congregation. So let's see, how can I go to the next slide? Phone calls.
Just one of your arrow buttons.
Oh, okay, just let's see. No, maybe that's not it. Okay. And of course, power in is in the product of relationships. So you have to depend on all of your relationships, especially your family members from all over the state and all over, not just over the state, but all over the United States. So what's so cool about this tool is that it's, you know, you don't have to just reach out to people in California. You can also reach out to people all over the United States to encourage them to get out and vote. So here's a text, a link to your congregation link via, oh, Hustle is something different. We're not doing that. What we're doing is the pledge cards. Sam might be able to give you a little bit more information about the pledge cards. I don't know what these things, oh, okay, now here's Outvote. All right. Outvote is an app available for Android or iOS mobile phones that, with your permission, will allow you to text actions to your phone's contacts, reminding them to vote. So we're gonna try to do a training on Saturday. We're not quite sure if that's gonna happen, but for anyone who needs a training on Outvote, some of the staff will be trained tomorrow. So we can do a training on that if you need it. I don't know if any of you have any experience with Outvote. Have you ever heard of it before?
No.
Okay. So it is a tool. It is a tool, and it's an app for your phone or for your computer. Some people don't want to put any more apps on their phones, and that's understandable. But if it's on your phone, then you can just connect it to your contact list, and you can just send messages out on your cell phones. And I believe what it is just like you know how sometimes you get those like 4-digit codes or something like that, and it has a message on it, and then people can respond to that code. Have you seen that? I'm sure a lot of you have.
Yeah.
Yep.
Received something like that before. So that's what Outvote is. And I can't really tell you a whole lot about exactly how to use it, but that's the whole idea of it. The pledge cards. Sam, you want to say a little bit more about the pledge cards?
Yes. So what I understand is that the pledge cards are going to be sent out to everybody, and we can definitely send the link out once we have it. I don't have it right at this moment.
Yeah.
But we can send the link out to everybody on this list. And the idea is that people will pledge to vote yes on Prop 15. And then you can also send the link, forward the link to other people in your network, whether it's friends or family. And for Prop 15, it's specifically anybody in California. So it's just a way for us to reach out to just everybody you know and tell them how important it is. And so I think it would be a wonderful thing for us to do at Kehilla, to just within our network, within our Havurah, ask people to commit to vote yes on Prop 15 and to tell all their friends, and that's how the word spreads. But I don't have the link at the moment. I was hoping you would have it, Barbara.
I'm gonna look. I believe I do have a pledge card, and I think what was happening is Pico, California was working on making ours specific to Faith in Action East Bay, because you know, to put our logo on it instead of Pico, California's logo, or in addition to, because they made it for all of the federations. So that's what we were waiting on that. I may have a copy of it in here, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen it recently, but I'm gonna look for it right now.
Well, if we don't have it, Sam is going to do a follow-up email to all the people who have registered and also been on this call, and we will send it in that.
Yes.
So Barbara, I wanted to ask you, if people want to be involved with the training for Outvote or anything else that Faith in Action is doing, so they contact you?
Sure.
Okay, so maybe Laura can put your information or in the chat, or you can?
I can put it in the chat.
Okay. Okay, so is there anything else that you wanted to say, Barbara. Thank you so much for what you have said.
I don't know if any of you are registered for the Regional Leadership Retreat on Saturday, but if you are not, it's a really good place to be to learn more about what we're going to be doing pretty soon, actually, and getting involved at the beginning of when we're rolling out the pledge cards and the outvote. So if any of you need the invitation to Saturday's leadership retreat, I can send it to Sam. Maybe he can get it out to the whole group. It's not too late to register. We'd love to have you.
Okay. Thank you so much. And
it's
thank you so
from
much,
10
Barbara.
It's from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Oh, okay, good. So 3-hour training on Saturday.
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much, Barbara.
You're welcome.
Very interesting ideas, the app to send to friends and family. Okay, so now we're going to move. The final part of our program is to talk about the tie-in with Proposition 20, also on the ballot in November. And Laura Finkler, who was one of the planners for this meeting tonight and is a long-term member of the Economic Justice Committee and long-term activist, is going to talk briefly about Prop 20 and how it connects in with Prop 15. Welcome, Laura.
There. Hi,
Okay.
everybody. Thank you, Karen. Proposition 20, whose official title is the Criminal Sentencing, Parole, and DNA Collection Initiative, adds crimes to the list of violent felonies for which early parole is restricted. It recategorizes certain types of theft and fraud as crimes that can be charged as felonies or misdemeanors, and it requires DNA collection for certain misdemeanors. It changes current criminal sentencing and parole policies in the following ways. It decreases the definition of misdemeanor theft from $950 to $250. It makes specific types of theft and fraud crimes chargeable as misdemeanors or felonies rather than just as misdemeanors as they are now. These include firearm and vehicle theft and unlawful use of the credit card. Prop 20 requires persons convicted of certain crimes that were classified as felonies or those that could be charged either as felonies or misdemeanors before the passage of Prop 47 to submit to the collection of DNA samples for state and federal databases. The California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation has a parole review board program in which felons convicted of nonviolent crimes can be released on parole on completion of their sentence for their offense with the longest imprisonment term. Prop 20 would require the parole review board to consider additional factors, such as the felon's age, marketable skills, attitude about the crime, and mental condition, as well as the circumstances of the crime, before deciding whether to release a felon on parole. It would also define 51 additional crimes as violent in order to exclude them from the parole review program. So Prop 20 was designed to make changes to Assembly Bill 109, Prop 47, and Prop 57. Those three measures, they were each intended to reduce the state's prison population. Assemblyman Jim Cooper, who's a Democrat actually from District 9, he's one of the main forces behind the initiative, stated that its goal is to, quote, correct the unintended consequences of reforms to better protect the public. Former Governor Jerry Brown disagreed and said that the initiative is the latest scare tactic on criminal justice reform. In 2011, the US Supreme Court ruled that the overcrowding in California prisons was cruel and unusual punishment, and that California must reduce the prison population to no more than 137% of its stated capacity. That is 30% above the capacity it was designed for. That same year, California passed Assembly Bill 109, which shifted the imprisonment of non-serious, non-violent, and non-sexual offenders from state prisons to local jails. It also made counties, rather than the state, responsible for supervising certain felons on parole. Prop 47, passed by voters in 2014, changed several crimes which the measure considered non-serious from felonies, or from being charged either as felonies or misdemeanors, to misdemeanors. Governor Jerry Brown then developed Proposition 57, which was voters passed in 2016, to increase chances for parole for felons convicted of nonviolent crimes and give them more opportunities to earn sentence reduction credits for good behavior. These three measures resulted in a sizable reduction in the state prison population. Proposition 20 is supported by the Orange County Board of Supervisors, the Association of Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs, the Los Angeles Police Protection League, the Peace Officers Research Association of California, and Albertsons Safeway. It is opposed by Governor Jerry Brown, the American Civil Liberties Union of Northern California, Service Employees International Union California State Council, and Bend the Arc, among other organizations. It's estimated that Prop 20 is likely to cost in the tens of millions of dollars annually, primarily related to increases in penalties for certain theft-related crimes and the changes to the nonviolent offender parole process. We hope to be successful in passing Prop 15, but if Prop 20 passes, it threatens some of the savings we will gain from the increased business property taxes that we need for local government, as been discussed. And of course, Prop 20 will add to the mass incarceration of our citizens, primarily Blacks, Latinx, and Indigenous peoples. So please tell everyone to vote yes on 15, but no on Proposition 20. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. And yeah, some appreciation for our Laura. And we are at the end of our program. We want to thank you so much for attending and getting involved with this really important work. And hopefully we'll see a lot of you out on the campaign trail. Yes on 15, no on 20. Is there anything else anyone wants to say from the planners that I might have missed? Sam or Laura or Sue? Or are we okay?
I just want to thank you, Karen, for emceeing and doing a great job, and for hosting and helping to organize.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, and thank you all for coming.
Okay. Save the chat if you want to. And you can get in touch with me if you want to, if you're interested in the Economic Justice Committee. And I'm KarenRachels@gmail.com. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.